Hi, and welcome back to our podcast. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. A lot of stuff has happened since last time. Basically, it's hard to remember where we left off. But before we go there, also hi and welcome to our my co-host, Mr. Dutch. How
Hi,
are you
Pierre.
doing?
It's good to see you. Happy New Year. I hope you had a nice break, a nice relaxing time over Christmas with not a lot to do.
Well, there was the Rapid and Blitz, but I mean, well, some of the others, as we will talk about later, do think Magnus gets help during the event. So that, of course, is flattering. But to be honest, it was a rather relaxing event from me. What about you? You had family over, I heard, right?
Yeah, I had a pretty chilled out Christmas period. I did go to Barcelona just before Christmas, which was nice. I got away from the snow for a few days, and then I had some family visiting over Christmas. And yeah, I did enjoy watching all of the. There was a lot of chess this year. Usually we get the World Rapid and Blitz, but this year we had a lot of extra events, which was fun because there was, always something happening. But maybe we should start with that. Maybe we should start with Alireza's road to the candidates. He won a lot of games, which was good for him.
There's been a lot of controversy about it. Let's start. You are basically a big fan of Alireza in this controversy, right?
Yeah, I believe he behaved not just correctly, but objectively the way that every athlete should behave. Like he maximized his chances to qualify for the candidates. I think, the matches that he played were, well, they weren't rated, so obviously there was a problem there. But he played the 7 round small open and won all 7 games just to ensure that he got into the candidates. And I think that's what everyone should have done.
So just to recap it, Alireza needed to win. I forgot how many, 5, 6, 8 points, right, to overtake Wesley So. He
Yeah.
started by that the mayor of his city, Shots, sponsored 3 mini matches. He needed to win 6-0, right?
He needed to win 6-0, and he didn't win 6-0. He won 5.5 to a
And
half.
he started out with 5-0. He could actually have withdrawn and qualified, but he didn't.
Yeah.
I think at that point when he was leading 5-0, there was quite some who were speculating it was all fixed, right?
Yeah, which is not. I mean, when someone racks up a score like that against a match that's clearly been arranged for the purpose of him qualifying for
Uh-huh.
candidates, I think the suspicions are fair. It's not unreasonable to ask questions there, but I think the fact that he drew the last game and didn't get to the candidates through that route proves that those games were just played against weaker players, and he's better than them, so he wins. Like, I don't think it's more complex than that.
No, I think it's a good way to clear yourself. I think also, I mean, the Topalov Kramnik World Championship match, people were also debating if Topalov were cheating, but he lost the match. I think that kind of settles that one as well, right? So the first attempt by Alireza was a failure in the terms of that he didn't qualify.
It was
But
also a failure in that the matches ended up not being rated by
that
FIDE,
that
so it
that
was
it
a bit of
actually
a
did.
waste of time.
And they didn't get the rated. Wow, this
No.
is more or less the first time in history that I've heard about that. They simply thought that this was too unserious, or did they have some kind of
My
clause?
my understanding, and I don't know if this has come out publicly, but my understanding is that the tournament was submitted incorrectly.
Okay.
It was submitted as a tournament and not a series of matches, which requires different regulations. Basically, the current regulations before the rules were changed in December is that a match had to be submitted 30 days in advance,
Okay.
and they didn't do that. So they tried to submit it as a tournament, which it clearly wasn't, and yeah, the FIDE said no.
But instead of sort of crying and going to Twitter and doing that, Alireza just moved on. Right? He realized that the FIDE January rating list, the cutoff is the 29th of December, right? Even so, he
Mm-hmm.
had like less than a week, or maybe had exactly 1 week, and he just flipped out the tournament calendar, found some tournament in France, right?
Yeah, that's basically what happened, and I think maybe he was a little bit fortunate that Kamsky also played in this tournament.
Well, that's because when he entered the tournament, I don't think Kamsky had enlisted, but he needed him as sort of a bouncing ball to grab some rating.
Yeah, he definitely needed at least one pretty strong
That was
grandmaster
because of the
to
FIDE
play.
cancelled. If the FIDE hadn't cancelled the previous one, it was basically enough if he won like 2 points. But
Yeah, he needed
yeah,
to pick up a few points against Kamsky.
but
And
he actually
honestly, like I think Kamsky is probably one of the worst players to play in that kind of scenario because he's still incredibly difficult to beat. He loses like one
yeah.
game every two
The
years.
problem is that I forget who you are. I was about to say, yeah, but that's because you played him in his peak years, like me. Well, you didn't actually play him in his peak years, but I mean, the guy, the Kamsky I remember was, of course, a beast like that. How he is now, I honestly don't know. But I mean, to say that it was a sure thing, he would beat Kamsky. It's not. Of course, he was lucky. He got white to some extent. That probably was
Yeah, I
helpful.
think if he'd got paired with Black against Kamsky, Kamsky plays
Yeah.
some London, like it's going to be very difficult to
I mean,
get something.
I think he would still be a favorite to do it because he would go all in, but it would be a much bigger challenge. Now, as we saw the game, he got a nice position and he basically put pressure and crushed him in a way, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but also, I mean, it's maybe not the most honorable way, in my opinion, but I mean, it's completely legitimate. And I mean, well, you actually find it just very honorable that
Yeah, I
you
totally do. Like, I
yeah.
feel like this is what players should do, and
Hmm.
I think maybe there's something of a generational difference at this
Yeah.
point between Gukesh and Alireza and the players who didn't qualify for the candidates, because Gukesh basically did the same thing in that he
Hmm.
played two very strong round robins in December, but basically back to back. And if he won either of them, he would qualify. He managed to win the second one
You
because that was his goal. Like,
Do you feel it's similar to what is it called when people are flagging these days? I mean, remember Kramnik sort of, you can't flag, while the young generation says like, it's just a completely legitimate part of the game. This is how we play.
yeah, I think it's pretty legitimate at this point. Like like if it's rook against rook, I understand the frustration. Like
Hmm.
if you have like 20 seconds left each, and you have rook against rook, and someone makes you sit there for
Yeah.
60 moves. Well,
No, but
I
also
guess 50 moves, but
you see
like,
it in speed chess that they will run down the clock and no one would care. Well, I mean, I think it's ridiculous, but it seems like everybody thinks, no, this is how we play. And well, if everybody agrees this is how we play, then it's how it is in a way, right?
yeah, as long as it's within the rules, I think it's fine. I
Mhm.
mean, with speed chess running the clock down, letting your clock run out to kill time, I'm not a huge fan of that because I think as a viewer, it's
Of
just
course.
terrible. Like,
Well, you will go and have a cup of coffee or whatever. But I
it's
mean,
like,
you risk that it could, in a pawn ending, it could actually be for 10 minutes. So I mean, yeah, it would be bad.
yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. But when it's within the rules, I
Hmm.
think the players
Hmm.
are basically
Yeah.
morally obliged to
But I
maximize
think
their chances.
also the shots tournament, we saw quite some complaining. Rouen, or how it's pronounced in France, my apologies. That was very little complaint, but everybody seems to think it was decent. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just a nice little small tournament. I hope he goes back next year.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have to say I enjoyed the pictures because basically you see a top. I don't know if he's top. He's maybe only top 10 by now, but he sits there playing. An extremely local tournament. You can see that. Well, people pay their entry fees. They buy their own cup of coffee, right? And it's a hall full of people. It's just like any kind of local chess tournament as there should be. And then, well, Alireza is sitting there qualifying for the candidates. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
think, and I think all of that is just a net positive for chess. I think
yeah.
having one of, well, possibly the next world champion playing against some 1700 guy in a
Yeah, I
Christmas Open, like
mean,
I think this is brilliant. Like
it,
this is
it
what chess should
feels
be. This
it
is
feels wrong that you can qualify like this, but it was also charming in some sense. And maybe to round off the subject, but it didn't seem to be too bad training. If sometimes we say if you play weak tournaments, when you go on to the next super tournament, it's not going to work because you will have lowered your level. But it seemed on the contrary, Alireza just keeping his speed. He's leading white by 2 out of 2, right? So I
yeah.
thought it was
It's
a bit,
chess
bit
is all about momentum. You
yeah,
get the ball
apparently.
rolling and you just keep winning.
Yeah.
Like,
No, that is fascinating. Anyway, we should move on to less fun subjects. Or no, actually not. It's Rapid and Blitz is the next thing happening, right?
yep.
So that
So
we,
decent week for you personally.
yeah, that was awesome. And I, it's I wouldn't say that you congratulated me, but also it was not exactly me playing. But yeah, I was Magnus second there, and that was great. They got to Samarkand, and despite, I would say, traveling logistics being quite difficult, it was a pretty impressive field. I'm just trying to talk Magnus' performance up. I thought it was a good field, right?
Yeah, I think only really Nakamura was missing.
And Alireza, for obvious
Another race.
reason,
Okay.
he had
Yeah.
a bigger event
Yeah, he
somewhere.
it didn't feel like he was missing because he was still playing, but he was
Exactly.
playing elsewhere.
No, Naka chose not to go, but everyone else who would contend was more or less there, right? And I think, well, this Rapid and Blitz is so rare, I will praise FIDE, but this one has turned out extremely well. It's become a major event. I mean, basically everybody is going, and they seem to take it seriously.
Yeah, it is a very good event on its own. I mean, I think they've been very consistent with
Hmm.
keeping the dates the same and keeping Magnus playing. Like as long
Yeah,
as you can get Magnus, you can generally get most of the top players. I would much prefer if Hikaru was there,
of course.
which
But
I think is unfortunate. But in general, if Magnus plays, it's usually a pretty good tournament. And also, like there was a bunch of top players. Like it's
yeah,
not
but
like it's not like there was Magnus and then we're down to like
But I
27.
think that is more or less the rule. I also explained that to a lot of Norwegians. I mean, well, again, my same coaching career is now the same. That, well, a lot of us do great work, but it all surrounds us Magnus. If you take Magnus out of the equation, I mean, it becomes difficult. Also, I mean, Norwegian television is praising themselves for great things, and rightly so. But I mean, if Magnus decided to skip a year, it's not going to be great on Norwegian television, and it basically goes for everything that. Well, he's a necessity for making these things work, as I see it. But of course, there will be a time after Magnus, and we will see. But I just thought the World Rapid and Blitz has grown. At some point, it was an event. Well, people will play, they would collect the money, but they wouldn't really care. But now, I mean, they're treating it like it's something that actually matters, and that makes it more fun, I would say. But
No,
not
I agree.
without controversy. And now, as we are debating, Magnus' special status, some kind of rebellion happened on day 1 or 2, right? I forgot which day it was, but
I
Magnus
think it
has a
was after day one. I think
yeah.
it started with Nepo tweeting about.
Yeah, Nepo was tweeting about it, and others started supporting him, and they basically were gunning at that. Magnus has a private room or private suite where he can sort of go back to after the games. He didn't always have that. If you sort of Google far enough back, you can find pictures of me and Magnus sitting in Dubai maybe 9 or 10 years ago with a laptop in a common room. But he has gotten this kind of room where he can go and hide. This is not the first year, and it's also not the first year there's criticism of it. But this time it kind of took off. And well, maybe as I'm so biased, you give your opinion on this one.
In general, I think it's fine because I think Magnus gets treated differently from all of the other players in terms of how much people harass him.
But okay, but this is a sort of it's a world championship. Everybody should have equal conditions. Will be the argument.
Yeah, but also like they're like I mean, I've seen events where players are asking for pictures with Magnus. I've seen events where arbiters and organizers are also asking for pictures with Magnus. It's not just fans because, like, this is. I mean, I know it's a world championship, but it's a very big field. Like, there's a couple hundred players in total. Not everyone is necessarily competing for the top spots, and some of them will go ask for selfies or stuff like that. And I think Magnus gets treated differently in those kind of settings compared to the other players. Obviously, the others get asked for pictures and stuff as well, and that can be annoying. But like, I think Magnus is a different case. I do agree that in general it should be equal, but also I don't think that's necessarily what the other top players want. I think the other top players also want either a private room, or I think the compromise is that some players were invited into the official VIP lounge. But again, it was only some players, so they didn't really mind as long as they got something as well.
No, I mean I remember back in Berlin, which is the last time I was with Magnus for. I mean, it's during Christmas for a long time, and I was allowed to stay home with my kids. Thanks for that, by the way. But then in Berlin, I mean Magnus had not a room for himself, but I was maybe like 4 or 5 players. I'm pretty sure Kramnik was there, and at least Nakamura as well. I don't know about Nepom. a little bit before he had broken through fully. But then they would have this kind of plays, and I think, well, that criticism from the players goes in two directions. I think one of them is that Magnus gets this rest, but I fully agree with you that, I mean, in a World Championship match with two players, they are obviously getting the same conditions, and that's very reasonable. When it's 200 players, it gets very difficult for Magnus. There's no doubt. As you say, he's chased all the time. He cannot get any kind of free time and sort of calmness. And this is a huge difference from, say, other sports. I mean, well, Ronaldo can just go to the dressing room and relax and hide. Any kind of other sports setting is built like that. But chess is very different. We play 5 rounds a day. They have to wait for half hour between the game. And Magnus is literally being mobbed by other people. It's, well,
Yeah,
it's always been the case, and it's gotten worse recently. As you said, that, well, I remember some stories. Someone say, "Well, why don't you go to the arbiter?" Well, it was the arbiter asking for I mean, an autograph. What should I do, right? And
yeah, and also there was a case like yesterday, I think,
uh huh,
with this young girl, this young English girl. She's 8 years old,
yeah, yeah,
Ladana. She was playing in the European Blitz Rapid Championship, and or maybe it was the Rapid. It was Rapid or Blitz, I don't know. But she played against Nurgul Salimova, and I think it ended in a draw.
uh huh,
Oh no, I think she won. Actually, no, she won.
yeah,
So the 8-year-old girl beat one of the candidates in the next women's tournament. And after the game, apparently Salimova had said to her, it was very noisy around the board, and she was supposed to, go to the arbiters, but it was the arbiters making all the noise because they were all crowded around the board watching this 8-year-old
yeah,
girl,
yeah.
demolish an IM, which is very impressive. But also, like, the arbiters are not always super
No, but
professional
I
around
mean,
these things.
well, they are to some extent appointed, if we should go in the criticism of FIDE direction, or, well, they're not very well paid. It's a semi-touristic experience to some extent, and that's
Yeah.
the point. Is this is the premise it's built on? If we want to have a tournament with 200 players, with Magnus participating, we have to have some kind of balance, and I think balance is having a private room because, well, FIDE, the organizers, is not capable of protecting him. The players and the
Mhm.
arbiters are not willing to let him in peace. I actually think it's a reasonable compromise that gives Magnus some advantages, but he also has some disadvantages, and we are forcing him to live with them. I thought, for instance, a concept could be that every player could buy a private room, and it would just be rather expensive. Magnus would
Yeah,
do that, but
I guess it depends on the venue and
yeah,
depends on
yeah,
what facilities they have.
of
But like,
course,
I don't really see a problem with like a VIP lounge for
no.
maybe the top 10 players from the previous year, something like that.
You
Like,
can
I think
make
there should be some. It shouldn't just be given to people because
No, I
they turn
agree.
up.
You can say that, well, medalist or 2750 or whatever. It's not impossible to make a cutoff that doesn't sort of give it to Magnus directly or so. But I think this was part of the thing that Nepom was asking for his own private room in advance. He was saying, and he was told, no, no, we're not going to give it to anyone. Then they were giving it to Magnus. And of course, Nepom's case was a bit weakened in terms of that he was not doing too well, and neither was Caruana, who sort of joined into the protest. But it was also quite legitimate and not the first time. So it's also somewhat of an unreasonable card to play towards them.
Yeah,
I
and
think basically,
part of the initial claim was that Magnus had access to a laptop that
yeah.
the other players didn't have because you can't have 200 laptops lying around in a big room.
But I think also, well, Magnus has his dad there. I think nothing prevents the other players of bringing a second slash family member who stands ready with a laptop. Well, Magnus didn't have a laptop, but I mean, you are allowed to have a person who has this ready for you outside, right? So, I mean, I also
Okay,
think that
but
is,
that is quite expensive to like bring a whole extra
well,
person who's going to
of
be there
course,
for
but that
5
is
days.
Magnus is investing in terms of his. I mean, there's nothing illegal in
Yeah,
investing
yeah,
in
no,
that.
I understand, but
Yeah.
like I think
Mhm.
nowadays, I guess, I mean, when you have these short breaks between games, there's probably the player themselves is not going to do a ton of preparation. They're
No.
either going to get texted something or
That would be
they won't.
ideal. When I played the World Cup in 2011, I had a lot of playoffs, and, well, we were just. I was sitting on the spectator areas reading a book at some point where I desperately want to have access to a computer and prepare, but it was not really practically possible. And I just shrug it off. But of course, it is something that should generally be addressed. But I mean, again, when we have 200 teams and not two teams, it's difficult to find the facilities, right? So then, well, you could limit the field to 16 players and we could do it. But there's no willingness to do that as well. So if you want to have this mass event, there has to be some compromises, I think.
Yeah, I don't think limiting it to such a small event would be
No, we
would
have
make a better event. For example, you have a bunch of guys who get a chance at the top players.
Exactly.
There's often a few people who overperform, or they'll get to play with the top players for the first time.
No,
it's a very good event in that respect.
Of course, you could have a knockout thing, and it could be also cool. But I think this one is cooler in a way, and it's a little bit like the candidates tournament. That I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the 8 all play all, but it's worked so well recently. It would be insane to start changing it. And the same with the World Rapid Blitz. It's actually working. So we will have to find some solutions to these kind of problems. And but also, the solution should not be to do it in a way when Magnus disappears, because we have to accept that it's a gift that he's playing.
Yeah, and I think the the cost to the organizers in terms of sponsors would be pretty large, and any amount of criticism they get for even just giving him his own room and giving everyone else nothing, I think they'll probably just take that hit.
Yeah.
The reality is that he is more valuable to them, but I think a compromise should be that the top 10 or 15 or whatever in each section should be allowed into a VIP lounge. Magnus should be in the same lounge. I don't think Magnus is getting harassed by other top 10 players.
Not to the same extent, maybe. But
I don't think Fabi's asking Magnus for selfies.
No, probably not.
Maybe Nepo is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But no, you have a point in that well, at least that they could debate with Magnus, and then we will see what he would do in a way. But
yeah,
anyway,
I think that's a reasonable compromise. But
it was not by far. It was not even close to being the only drama of the Rapid Blitz event, right? I mean,
no, the dress code.
The dress code. I even forgot. Yeah, that went into some kind of fighting, but that was almost pre-event. Or also, no, someone was sanctioned during the event, right?
Yeah, Anamaya Kazarian was fined €100 during the event for wearing inappropriate shoes.
Yeah.
She was accused of wearing sports shoes. I did kind of Google how expensive her shoes were, and I don't think they're the kind of shoes you would play sports.
No, I mean,
they're pretty expensive.
They are made to look like sports shoes in order to have a cool appearance rather than being actual sports shoes, right?
Yeah, I mean, they were designer shoes. They were Burberry. They were also incredible.
The reason we care about is that the rule says no sports sneakers, but sneakers is okay. I forgot.
Yeah, they said no sports sneakers, and Emil Stelsvik did clarify that it doesn't mean all sneakers.
Yeah.
So I'm genuinely curious, what sneakers qualify if €500 designer shoes don't qualify as dress sneakers, then what does? I have no clue.
But I mean, from my perspective, could we care about the 100 things that are more important first? I mean,
we could, yeah. But this is
not us. But I mean, FIDE in enforcing rules. You think this has any kind of relevance?
I don't know. I mean, in the open section, there was definitely a lot of dress code violations. I think Nepo's outfit on one day broke the dress code in, I think, every piece of clothing he was wearing, which I support, by the way. I'm totally on board with this. I think Rapid and Blitz should have much more of a sports vibe than classical.
Well, I think both, because I mean, if you play in a suit, it's actually uncomfortable in terms of having to move quickly and so on and so forth, right? So
yeah, I mean, even especially in Blitz, if your choice is wear short sleeves or not, you wear short sleeves and you take the fine.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think I will not say which event, but they had an event for if you're late for the game, you have to pay that amount of euros. And I think as a joke, we always walked around with it in cash. So if they came, we could just yeah, don't bother us. Here's the 500, right? But yeah, I think you're right. If the fine is €100, Magnus would much rather play in something that helps his sporting performance. But I think what you're also saying is that as long as they are not doing something that basically puts the game into disrespect. Let them dress however they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, there's a picture of Nepo and Dubov playing, which I guess we'll get to that game at some
Yeah,
point.
we will.
But also, like, neither of them are following the dress code. They're both wearing jumpers, but they both look good.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the picture of them in that game, they're both wearing nice jumpers. They look
Yeah.
great. Like there's nothing wrong with what they're doing, but it's against the dress code. And I think as long as people, follow the spirit of the dress code rather than the letters, like they don't look like they've just
Oh, but
rolled out of bed. Like there
yeah,
should
yeah.
be some flexibility. Like
I
we
mean,
should encourage the players to have some character. They're not bankers. Like we need to
mhm,
stop pretending that they are.
yeah, and also, well, and we should stop pretending that having them look like bankers is to our advantage. It makes very little sense, in my opinion, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. Particularly with fast chess. I think with classical, you can definitely say there's a different vibe. Like it can look
no,
different with them dressed very
a world
nicely.
championship match with two players, we can debate if they should play in a suit as such. I'm not necessarily a huge fan, but I'm fine with being in the minority. But a massive event like this, I mean, if you had 200 male players going around in the same dress, it would look ridiculous to me.
Yeah, and I don't think the dress code was applied
And
very
sort of,
consistently, which
but so we can feel pity for her that she lost €100. But to be fair, it worked out pretty well for her. She got an amazing amount of exposure, right?
yeah, but I mean that's that's something at least. But
Yeah,
it's also not everyone actually enjoys that kind of exposure. Like
fair
it does
enough.
come with a lot of criticism. It does come
Yeah,
with a lot of
of course. No, no. I
comment
mean, also, it must have
from
been incredibly disturbing. No
yeah,
doubt.
yeah. And I watched her video recap, and she was clearly very upset
Yeah,
during
yeah.
the day. I
Mhm.
mean, by the next day, I think she kind of got things together. But yeah, it's tremendously distracting. She had to run out of the venue, go buy a new pair of shoes. Like it was absurd.
Yeah, yeah. That's also should be understood that the players they don't play. I mean, they are living in a hotel, which is not the playing hall. So when you are told your shoes are not fine, well, you actually have a very sort of low practical problem that you are wearing a pair of shoes that are illegal. You have to go and find something else. I mean, it's yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, I think the reaction from the non-chess community was, much more normal. Is that people were absolutely baffled by the
yeah,
idea that you need to wear certain shoes to play chess, which
yeah. But
doesn't really
also,
make
I'm
sense.
baffled. I mean, well, there must be people in FIDE who sits there and say, "Okay, we're gonna take this case and just push it hard through." I mean, what goes on in their minds? I don't get it.
Yeah, I have no clue. I mean, Emil seemed to pass it over to the Athletes Commission, and the people on the
Yeah, but that
Athletes
is
Commission denied that they had any interest in this whatsoever. So, like,
it's also ridiculous. I mean, FIDE has been pushing themselves for this dress code for a long time to sort of push it on to the athletes committee. I mean, it's my impression if the athletes committee said that, well, this is ridiculous, let's just do whatever we want, FIDE would not accept it. So, yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, but okay, fair enough. Then we move on to, well, the big one. It's the Pomniachtchi against Dubov, but it was a protest, at least they say so, against something that happened earlier. So we should also explain that, right? There
yeah,
was a game that suddenly postponed the whole event for more than an hour.
yeah, just about an hour. It was Yu Yang Yi against Hong, I think.
Yeah.
And there was a complaint that the clock had stopped working, so that Hong's time ran out. So he made an appeal, and it took them over an hour to decide whether or not the clock was faulty or not. Yeah, this seems extravagant to take an hour
Yeah.
to
I mean,
decide this.
quite embarrassingly, I have myself postponed an event like the World Rapid in Dubai for this 9 years ago. I was playing a game there, and we also got into some dispute. I was right for a change, and won it. But we basically debated for 20 minutes with the arbiters. And the problem is that that sort of delays everything else. And well, I was on minus something, so it had really little relevance, much less relevance for the standings than this game had. So, of course, it is inbuilt in the system that this can happen. And of course, players needs to have the possibility to protest in a way. But I mean, well, I think it has to be like in football, right? So he says the clock is not functioning, then the arbiter looks at it, and after 1 minute he says, "Okay, I've ruled this," and that's more or less it. Or how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, you can't hold up the whole thing for an hour.
No, I
Like, not
mean,
over something as relatively trivial as this. Like,
mhm.
if there was a cheating accusation, for example, I understand why that might take longer to establish what's actually happening, and people might be more emotional and things like that. But when it's
And then we also in a
a clock,
legal situation already. I mean,
yeah. But when it's just a clock, either the clock works or it doesn't.
yeah.
Like, you test the clock. If the clock works, okay, you flag. Like, you messed up. Human error. They
I
also have
mean,
video of everything, basically.
yeah, if they have video and such, it should also be possible to check it. But well, some of the criticism I saw, I actually saw Nepom is well, there's just all these kind of rivaling podcasts coming out talking about FIDE, and now Nepom has his own as well. Quite interesting. And he
Mm-hmm.
was saying that, well, it's ridiculous it takes so long, but it's also a problem that, I mean, well, that people are connected and such. I mean, well, for instance, what I really disliked from a legal perspective was that you see that the chief arbiter and the head of the appeals is standing together with the player debating. I mean, that's two difficult juridical entities. One is the chief arbiter who has to make a decision, and then you have the appeal committee who should, well, look at the case and decide on that. But they're not supposed to talk to each other. And
Yeah,
it basically said that, well, chess things has to end up with we're going to sit and debate things together and find a solution. That's just not how it should work. I mean, you have a referee. He look at the case, bang, he makes a decision. That's how sports should be, right?
yeah. But also, like, I mean, we've definitely joked about appeals committees enough, but like, we know how these appeals committees are decided. These are jobs for the boys. Like, that's what they are. Like, people get paid to be on these appeals committees, and
Yeah.
if you know the right people and you say the right things, you get a job as an appeals committee.
Nepom actually made this point, and he did it a bit sharper than us. He's apparently less dependent on FIDE. He said that, well, the problem is that the appeals committee is not independent. Of course, they are independent in principle, but as you say, they get the jobs from FIDE, and they are completely aware of that. So they will tend to rule in the direction of the chief arbiter because he's also part of the FIDE family to some extent. And this Nepom was saying it openly, and well, I agree
Yeah, I
with
mean,
him from a
I think there should be like almost an element of randomness about who's on the appeals committee. For example, there should be a player in the tournament,
that could be that would be that
and
was
you
the case.
can randomly select one for each decision.
I mean, back in the old days when we started the tournament, it will be like, so who wants to be an appeal committee? And then you will go and
I don't think you
suggest.
get to. You shouldn't do it like that, though.
No, but you
You
could.
shouldn't let people choose.
Well, maybe not, but well, but also, I generally you could argue this idea of having a pool of 50 eligible person who could be an appeals committee, and then
Yeah,
you draw lots of that or something like that.
yeah.
There
No,
is,
I think that would be more reasonable,
yeah.
but that's not what the function of the appeals committee is. Is
No,
to
I have suggested that arbiters and appeal committees, that there is a completely separate entity who sort of evaluates and chooses these persons who has nothing to do with the political layer of FIDE. But well, as you pointed out, as we all understand, it is rewards for. I mean, no, to call it bribes is way too strong, but it's a it's a way of rewarding people to a certain extent, right?
yeah.
And
It's an exchange of money and for
yeah,
services.
I mean, for sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, that is. Well, we are both getting paid in the chess world as well. I mean, it's not unreasonable you
Yeah,
do that.
but no, but I mean the way these. Yeah, I mean this is how they get decided. Like, there's
No
no.
doubt. But this
You're
was sort of the prelude, and well, we should understand that. Well, Magnus at least could go to his private suite and wait for an hour. But here, you had 200 players. I think even you had 300 players because the female section was also waiting, despite it didn't happen in their group, right?
Yeah,
So
but okay, you can't really start their games
no.
while everyone is standing around making noise. Like,
So you have 300 players who just have to sit and wait, and they can't go back to the hotel because they don't know when the round starts and so on. I mean,
mhm.
well, you will see it in football on extremely rare occasion if there is violence among spectators. But well, you cannot imagine. Well, we all think that it's ridiculous. VAR checks takes 2 minutes. Well, this one took more than an hour. It's extremely disturbing for the players. It takes their time and so on and so forth. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
So that was the background to
Yeah.
the Nepo and Dubov game.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so what did they do?
Well, they made a quick draw in 13 moves, and they were all 13 knight moves. And basically, well, they were starting knight f3, I think knight f6, knight d4, knight d5, and shuffling the knights around the board. And then on move 13, Dubov played knight f3 and offered a draw, which was accepted. That is bad enough in itself, I think. And they were not punished immediately. They were actually punished only after the next round, because then the day was over, and the chief arbiter decided to give them both a 0 instead of the draw. So it had also messed up the pairings, because Nepom had to play Magnus the next round based on it being a draw, but now he was deducted half a point by the chief arbiter. But I would say everything was done to the book at this point. But then I think Nepom and Dubov, they protested to the appeal committee, which is also kind of straightforward. But I think also the players hadn't realized, and not too many had either, but there is microphones next to the board, right? So basically, well, I think that you were basically saying if you were the players' lawyers, you would be a bit quiet, because it was literally a confession on tape, right?
Yeah. They discussed what they were going to do before the game, and then they played the moves on the board. So I don't think there's ever been a clearer case of a prearranged result. I think
no.
I think it'd be very difficult to defend this one. I'm kind of surprised that they even bothered to appeal. I think they're lucky that they didn't get forfeited from the tournament.
Well, I think that they are lucky they didn't get forfeited from the tournament. Magnus sort of said in a release, he thinks it's okay they got punished, but it's good that they didn't get forfeited. But I mean, forfeited for the tournament is one thing. You could also argue that we have video evidence of two players match fixing a game in a world championship. That would normally lead to a rather long ban, would be my impression.
Yeah, I agree. And also, it's not what I would want. I don't want either of those players to be banned. But yeah, I think it is very difficult to kind of make a case that there should be a punishment for that. I think 0-0 is fair. Like, they lose the half point each, and
yeah, I mean,
it's clear that they were very upset by the way the tournament had been organized so far. They shouldn't have done it, but like, the reality is they're the only people who lost out from it. So,
but do you really think that argument holds up just minimally in court? That you say no, it was a protest. I mean, there's many violent.
No, but I think you can make a case that game fixing is that generally it leads to one player winning and gaining an advantage over.
You are saying that they are not trying to cheat. Well, they get some extra rest, but that
I mean, if they wanted to just rest, then they could just agree a draw immediately, as many other players did.
Yeah. So you are arguing that sure, it is match fixing, but this we still believe happens all the time. And I mean,
it's match fixing, and in cases like this, I think that a 0-0 is an appropriate punishment for this.
Yeah, and
kind of thing.
I would argue that normally we say, sure, this game is obviously match fixed, but we don't have evidence. Well, this time we actually do. But then, of course, we can debate, I mean, how hard should we hammer them? And I say that if we only give them a 0, we are saying this is not a very serious offense. But that's basically what you're saying, that prearranging a game as a draw.
No, I think losing a half point is a pretty serious punishment in the World Championship.
Theoretically, it cost Dubov the World Championship, so fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's not kind of letting them off lightly.
No.
And it's something that happens very rarely in chess for players to just be defaulted. I mean, and you can definitely kind of consider whether they should be fined a certain percentage of the prize money as well. But I don't think this kind of thing is like, it's clear that like, there's very malicious forms of match fixing, and I don't think that's what was happening here. Like, they were both being incredibly dumb.
Yeah, and so you're saying that they are not trying to, they're trying to ruin the integrity of the tournament, but in case of making it look ridiculous. They're not trying to ruin the integrity of the sporting results, something like this, yeah?
Yeah, I think that'd be fair. And I don't think it was a particularly good form of protest. I don't think it was particularly clear that they were protesting, because
I only realized
much
later. But of course, maybe we're not in the hall. Maybe, I mean, it was not. I mean, we had to wait 1 hour as well. But I would just make coffee and go and play with my kids while the players actually had to sit on some bench somewhere and wait. I mean, I can understand they were pissed, but
Yeah, but yeah, there are definitely better forms of protest.
yeah,
I think the players should be a bit smarter about these things.
yeah.
But
It's clear. I don't think they realized they were on tape. I mean,
no, there's
yeah,
there is also that. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I guess you live and learn. Well, I
yeah.
mean, I guess that's the problem is that they didn't live and learn, and they repeated it in Title Tuesday the next week. But
Yeah, that is shocking to me actually.
I actually don't think it's shocking. I think 94 is just a draw for at this point. So like,
Yeah. No, maybe
that's
you're
what was
right.
happening. They offered a draw with 94, and
I mean, don't get it wrong. I have analyzed Knight D4 now, of course, and I don't think it's losing. Of course, it's very bad, but it's not as bad as the Grope, for instance. But maybe, yeah. Thanks for this necessary information. But yeah, I don't know what to say, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, I guess
yeah.
range
Well,
draws. Like,
also, I
I
mean,
objectively don't think this is worse than the Berlin repetition.
okay. Uh, that is wrong on so many levels that we need a separate episode for that. I'm sorry.
No, I just think it's the same
Yeah,
thing. Like,
fair enough. I really don't, and I think it would be cool to have an episode about draws like this.
okay, we'll get Hammer and Kramnik on to discuss it.
Yeah. I mean, Hammer and Kramnik is always welcome. I mean, and even if Kramnik is scared of me being annoying, which actually could happen, I'm willing to sit this one out. It will hurt me, but if it's just going to be you and Kramnik man against man, okay, I will do it for everybody wants that. So Kramnik, if you're afraid of me, I will not be there. Don't worry.
That's fair.
I mean, it's a very interesting topic. I think we should do a special episode about the draws. To be honest,
okay, good
because I mean, I disagree too much with you on this one. That if I start, I will not stop.
Yep. Okay, so let's move on. We'll do this another week.
Yeah.
Okay, so next up we have FIDE's finally published the list of candidates.
Okay, you are a PR media guru. If you had to rate that performance from 0 to 10, where are we on the scale?
Well, I mean, they got people talking about it, so
that is true.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
No, fair enough. Anyway,
I don't think they're necessarily obliged to say that Magnus won't play until he tells them that he won't play. So they were kind of in a weird spot.
Anyway, let's say what happened, right? That FIDE published that now, okay, January 1st has passed, and these are the 8 players who will play in Toronto. Or did they say the 8 players who have qualified for Toronto? I think they said who will play in Toronto.
I'm not sure exactly what.
No. But they put up pictures, and of course everybody spots Magnus' picture. And as Magnus' sort of coach, I would say that, well, given any kind of possibility, Magnus has said very clearly, there's no chance I'm going to play. I think he said it during the World Cup. He said it after. I mean, privately, publicly, wherever. And
he could be bluffing.
Yeah, and that. But we have gone through this once already. I mean, it's like it's a guy who actually, voluntarily gave away the World Championship title. He has some credibility in that sense. But
yeah, it would be very odd if he jumped back in for this one immediately. Like, it would make more sense if he, if Alireza wins, becomes world champion, and Magnus plays the next one. Or if Gukesh or Prague wins the world championship. Like, to me, it's more logical if he actually wanted to play a match against Prague or Gukesh. Or
yeah.
Alireza.
I mean,
because that seems like a different challenge.
I'm really not going to hijack the system, but I'll give Magnus any ideas. But let's say Alireza or Prague becomes world champions. I mean, well, he could say, why don't we play a 16-game match with a sponsor in India or France or Norway? I mean, it would still be very interesting. I mean, if Magnus wanted to have a match against one of these guys, well, he could choose to qualify. It would be extremely exciting. He could also ask, is my impression. I mean, there is many ways of doing it. I think that the main point is that he's given away. He doesn't want this at the moment, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think he's really interested in a match against someone.
I understand FIDE got some traction by this media thing, by publishing a list of players with Magnus' picture. But doesn't it more ridicule them that they're giving a PR? Or there's no thing as bad PR in the chess world?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the they're never really going to be breaking news with this announcement. So like it's not really new information. Everybody is very well
Mhm.
aware of who's actually going to play in the candidates. So like I don't think it's a huge
I
deal.
don't think there was one person saying, "Oh wow, Magnus is actually playing." Right? Everybody just
No,
thought,
no.
I mean,
But I mean, it's a little, yeah. I guess some intention. I don't really have a problem with it.
okay.
And now they've clarified that Magnus is not going to play.
Hmm.
He's officially declined. So the
Yeah,
candidates
they say he
field.
does withdrawn. I would object a bit to that. No, he was never in, but who cares? But yeah, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
no,
So
yeah.
yeah, he's available to work as a second for any of the candidates.
Really? Okay,
You
could
never
be.
know.
I I doubt. Yeah, again, no. Then I will give away secrets of how we do things in our team. But yeah, that will surprise me a bit. I'm actually going to a camp with him tomorrow, but I've been told to bring my golf set. That's as much as I know. So I don't.
No laptop, just the
No,
golf.
I have a laptop I will have for myself, but I have instead of booking a suitcase, I've booked a golf bag. So I mean, at least I hope there will be some. And well, I think he seems to be there with Howell now, and they are posting pictures where they are both sitting in either a light shirt or without any shirt on. So it seems to be in pleasant climate. So we're probably going to the south of Spain. A short trip for me, but for him probably a longer camp. And
Okay,
so that should
nice.
be interesting. But
Are
I
you
don't think
allowed to
he.
say what this camp is aimed at, or no?
Well, if I knew, but I don't know. Well, his next
It's
event is in Germany, as far as I understand. Right, there is this
yeah,
Chess 960 event in at a sort of seaside resort in the north of Germany, and I think it's going to be very strong, if I remember correctly. I
yeah, it's
think that
incredibly strong. I think
maybe
Ding's playing
Ding,
Caruana.
Caruana, Aronyan,
I think Gokesh plays in this one as
Gukeshia.
well,
I would
and
assume Kamer
Keimer.
since it
Yeah,
is Germany, and a couple of more, but I've actually
I think
forgotten a
Nepo
bit.
plays as well.
Really?
I'm not. Maybe I'm
I
wrong.
I think not, to be honest.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, it's to say if I hope so, not. It's, but it's for some. No, I don't think he is, to be honest. But that should be interesting, and it's 960. And well, you can see on the picture with Howl, Magnus is playing a chess 960 game with him. But from our perspective, the exciting thing is that it might be the first time in history that extremely strong world elite players will play chess 960 with classical time control. I never think that has happened before. This has been one of Magnus's basic points that, well, actual chess is so well explored. We should play it in the rapid format. On the contrary, chess 960 is so complex and so unnatural for chess players
Hmm.
that it has to be played with classical time control. So this will be an interesting experiment. And
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't go into the Kramnik details, but something that would be interesting for me, for instance, is that well, we are publishing all these percentages. How much are these percentages actually dropping if you start playing 960? I would assume they drop quite considerably. And so this actually would give you an idea if you think this is a reliable stat. How much worse does human become in chess 960 compared to normal chess? I mean, maybe Magnus plays at 2600 level, which is already pretty good, but it's still a considerable drop for what he normally does. This will be interesting to
Yeah.
see.
I think some of the previous Chess 960 games, I think occasionally players have drifted into very unusual positions and just played really way below their
I mean,
normal level.
you have seen White being lost at move six. At I mean, well, if you were lost at move six with the White in a classical game, I mean, it would be really embarrassing, right? I mean,
Yeah, but it's I guess it's just, you get into a unique position and
yeah,
you can't rely on
no,
your
that's the
normal
point
pattern
in chess. That
recognition. Like
we know
you
it
got to
so
think.
well, and no, that's going to be interesting to see. I mean, it can end up a bit embarrassing for the players and such. But this we will have. No, this I'm looking forward to, and
Yeah. So
I
the
mean,
full field is Magnus, Fabi, Ding, Alireza, Keimer, Nodebeck, Gukesh, and Aronian.
it's extremely strong. Nakamura and So is perhaps missing of those who have done thing pretty well in chess 960. Perhaps I think Sam Sevian won this last St. Louis event as well. And of course, Gary would be very welcome, but maybe as well. Gary is also a huge fan of Chess 960. I actually think that if both, well, Fischer kind of invented it, and Magnus and Gary likes it, this says something. I mean, so that's. I think we're gonna look at some Chess 960. We're gonna play some golf, and it's not a bad job I have. Also, I mean, you are probably the wrong guy to complain with, but here in Lithuania, we had minus 20 a couple of times recently. And that is tough on me. But this is just how you live, right?
Yeah, I think we're about minus 20 today. But we did have a patch of about 5 days where we were very close to minus 40.
Okay.
Like,
but
like minus 35, but then minus 40 with the wind.
But maybe your houses are so used to it that you can actually manage, because for us, temperature started dropping inside and such. I mean,
oh no, inside we're fine. Like there was no real problem. But like at that temperatures, you can go outside for like 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah,
and then you start to.
This was a big thing for me when I moved to Lithuania from Denmark, because we do have the Gulf Stream in Denmark. Temperatures will drop, but not below minus 10. And the first winter here, I will just go in my jeans and go for half an hour walk. That the body cannot manage, and I learned the hard way simply, and
you have to be careful. But this was a very unique. This is the worst. The coldest it's been for like 10 years.
Yeah, no, we had it the same. I mean, it seems like it's been tough, but I mean, probably you're right that you are living so north in Sweden that I mean, you have actually, you had to set yourself up to manage these kind of things, right? So
yeah, in general, like houses are incredibly well insulated. They're very warm. There's no problems with that. But even at those temperatures, like infrastructure started to struggle. Like they couldn't use buses. They couldn't use even snowblowers didn't work at that temperature.
Okay, yeah, no, fair enough. I mean,
but yeah, I'm escaping the snow also this week. I'm going to a little northern town in the north of the Netherlands on Wednesday.
That is true. Actually, yeah. So you're saying the big thing is
sunshine.
It's actually weird that I have forgotten that, because Mr. Dodgy is like, he knocks to go to a place that I have spent more than half a year of my life in. It's maybe the coolest chess event there is, the Vacancy thing, right? So
yeah,
I mean, you're going to a small seaside town in January that's basically blocked off from anything but chess players. It can't get better than that, right?
Yeah, it sounds great. It'll be nice and warm, relatively speaking. It'll be, it's the first time I've been, so I'm very excited.
Oh, really? You've never been?
I've never been. No.
Wow. So when I say the Italian restaurant or the Kleine Switzerland, you have no idea what I'm talking about.
No idea.
That's cool. Oh, that you will enjoy. Oh, I'm not sure they will, but for you, it should be a great experience. So this you will tell us all about later. I'm sure that, and I think, as Tony Miles wrote someplace, if there's no controversy, well, the chess journalists have to make them themselves, right? So, I mean...
Yeah, that'll be my goal while I'm there. I'll try and make some controversies.
Good.
I'm hoping that Ding Loren, he last year in Vacancy, he picked his second, so I'm hoping that, this time it could be the same.
He could take you as a manager. I mean, that would be a match... that would be fun. But also, people say that he should choose a second. I thought he's grabbed the best one there is. It was just a match made in heaven with him and Rapport. I mean, we won the season 2 of that one, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't work together again.
No. I mean, you cannot stop after that, in a way, I would say. And also, to round it off with some good news, Ding announced that he's back and he's going to defend his title. Well, of course, it would be fun from my perspective if he'd, FIDE lost another world champion. But Ding said, no, I'm back, and that's it, right?
Yeah, he seems... I mean, clearly he needed a break, like that's for sure. But he seems to be back. He says he's definitely going to defend his title. And
I think people probably underestimate the psychological burden of suddenly being world champion. That's not something we all want. Some of us cannot even aspire to dream of. But it does have some kind of effect, right?
Yeah, I mean, like it must be very difficult to motivate yourself after winning it, because what do you do next?
Yeah. I mean, also it's going to be downhill from here, right? I mean. And such. And also, for Magnus, when he became world champion, maybe it was not a shock because he's been the best player in the world for a while. Ding didn't have that experience, right? So, it was...
Yeah, and also, like, the age difference, like, becoming world champion at 21, 22 is very different from doing it at 30. No, I mean, it must have been a distant dream for Ding, but I don't think Ding thought that he was
really competitive with Magnus, for instance, and such, right? So
Yeah.
interesting. He
But I
started
guess
with two
it's going to
draws,
be.
right? But
Yeah, he started with 2 draws.
but
Yesterday, a fairly quick draw as well against Danchenko.
yeah, he was slightly out prepared with white. It can happen, and I think the other draw with black, there was not much. I mean, he hasn't really gotten to play chess yet, in a way, right? I would say so. I mean, it's not that we cannot say that he's rusty or anything like this. I think just hadn't really started for him in some sense.
Yeah,
So we will
it
see.
is a very long tournament as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So I've heard.
Trust me. I mean, yeah. I mean, that is maybe the sort of hidden secret about Wijk, that it can be a very nice place, but if you're doing badly, it's 17 days in cold conditions and such. I think result really matters there. And well, you imagine you come off to a bad start, you have 1 point out of 5 in a normal tournament. Well, you're more than halfway. In Wijk, not at all. I mean, you can really get pounded badly there, but we'll see. So good. Okay, we have to start packing for going to the south, both of us. So maybe that's it.
Yeah. So well, I hope you enjoy your trip, and
Thanks. I promise you I will, and I hope also that Wijk will enjoy yours. So
yeah, I'm sure it'll be very interesting. I did miss the protest that was there on
but did
on
it
the
happen?
first day.
I saw that they were
I think they
protecting.
blocked some roads. I thought it would be incredibly funny if that was the day that I went to Wijk and like, literally blocking the roads to stop me. But sometimes not everything works for me.
But was it chess related, or it was Tata Steel related, right? They were.
Yeah, I believe they were protesting against.
No, I think some previous years they were going after Tata because there was pollution within the city that was affecting people and such. I mean, well, of course, us chess players are very happy about the steel factory there because they are sponsoring chess, and I think generally they strike me as very thoughtful guys. But of course, some locals will protest at times. And
it's always tricky to manage the balance.
Yeah. And, well, we have no clue, and also for us, we're just guests there for 2 weeks every year and are treated like royalty, at least if you come as Magnus second. So it's hard to be objective there.
No, I assume I'll be treated the same way.
I would assume. I mean, you are going to be picked up in a car and this kind of stuff, right? I mean, I would in the airport.
Well, yeah, but it's more, my friend's friend is going to pick us up. So.
Okay.
I don't think the organizers are saying.
No,
but they have been very nice to invite me. So
I'm sorry, with us they come with a sponsor poster, at least when we go to the games. But once,
I'm not getting that.
Once there was only 4 spots in it, and we are 5 people, so I took the bus. But it was also kind of interesting. So I mean, yeah, worst things could happen. Anyway,
okay. Well,
take good care. Thanks a lot.
See you next week. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.